I'd like to thank everybody for having me. Aaron told me about your organization, and I just jumped at the opportunity to come here and introduce myself and tell you a little bit about the company. I'll try to be brief and give you some tips and pointers for everyday gardening. Wanted to tell you what the community means to us at Gothic. We are a company that is split into 3 states, California, Nevada, and Arizona. We have about 1,200 employees, and about half of those are in Southern California. But more specifically, the business we get from this community employs about 100 different people right here in Santa Clarita. So this community is a huge part of our success, and it's obviously a pleasure to be here. Really appreciate it. Again, very briefly about the company. People hear Gothic Landscape and they wonder, what the heck is that all about? And this is a true story. You'd be surprised how many phone calls we get in October where people think we actually decorate front yards or, put on Halloween shows. That is a fact. That's not a made-up joke. But the name derives from the street that the founders grew up on, Gothic Avenue in the San Fernando Valley. And we remain family-owned and operated for almost 30 years. Next year is our 30th anniversary, so that's something that we're really proud of. The founders, the siblings that are the children of the founders still come to work every single day, and something we're very proud of. And in Lawn and Landscape Digest, which is a magazine that's prominent in our industry, we're considered one of the few companies that actually grew during the recession. And I think a lot of that's attributed to community, experience, and just sort of a solid core business. And we talked a little bit about the number of employees already. We carry ourselves with integrity. We do our work with an ethical morality that, you just can't bend or break. Once you've been in this industry for 30 years, you've made it this far for a reason, I think. Proven track record of master associations. In Canyon Country, there's not a huge number of HOAs, but in the Santa Clarita Valley, there are. And our retention rate's in the top 10%. I know this is some boring stuff, but just thought a shameless plug. And I'm going to keep it very simple. There's 3 main focuses in keeping your plants alive and healthy during these summer months. And it's really simple, but I want to go into a little bit of depth with each item. Water and irrigation is number 1. Food and fertilizer, and then the plant type and the soil that you're dealing with are also really important. So when it comes to your irrigation, your controller is your computer. It is your CPU. It's the central hub to where everything else operates. And so that's one of the things you want to constantly check. And for most of us, it's in our garage or it's in our backyard, and it's where we set the programming for how long and how often we water our plants in our lawn. You want to experiment. There's no science to this. It's actually an art. And again, because of the different soils and the different varieties of plant materials, you want to play with it a little bit, see what different watering times will mean for your lawn versus, maybe longer watering times but less often. We recommend late nights and early mornings, and what I mean by that is you want obviously as little evaporation as possible. So 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. is a good sort of time frame to water your plants and your turf. We believe that less time more frequently is the most effective way to do it. So what we mean by that is in the summer, generally you're going to water your lawn about a total of 10 minutes a day. If you can split it up into 2 times at 5 minutes apiece, 5 minutes at 10 p.m. and 5 more minutes at 6 p.m., you're better off. And the reason for that is if you have slopes or hills in your front yard, if you water for too long, you're going to get runoff and you're going to get a lot of wasted water. And that's obviously not a good thing for the environment, and it's obviously not good to your pocket. With water being such a scarce resource that it is, we want to try to limit that as much as possible. The second thing within the irrigation is the coverage. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've driven through the streets and I see a sprinkler that's completely facing the sidewalk and it's not doing anything for anybody. And that's something that's just going to constantly have to be checked. When we accept a job and we start our monthly service, the coverage is one of the first things that we tackle. Making sure that the water that's being discharged is going to where you want it to. Correct irrigation nozzles, that sort of goes with the coverage and making sure you direct them in the right way. The no runoff, no waste, again, it's to all of our benefit as a community, environment, and our personal pockets, our own investment in the area. Monitor and audit everything. That's a very broad statement, and basically what that means is July to August, it may be hot in both months, but it's not the same. So you'll want to make minor irrigation changes. Just a quick example, in July, we discussed 10-minute watering times per day, but in August, we cut that back. And you'd be surprised, if we cut it back 2 minutes a day, every day for 30 days, it's going to add up. And that's something that we pride ourselves on. And I wrote down a brief statistic. We believe that 60% of our time spent on any property is dedicated to irrigation. That's making it right, honing it in, getting it just perfect. Most people think that, you know, you come in, you mow, you blow, and you get out, and that's just really not the case. Irrigation is just such a huge part of what we do, and it can relate to an individual home like yourselves or an HOA community. Food and fertilizer, you know, this is one of the ways that we help rejuvenate plants and re-energize them in the summer months. And there's two different kinds for both turf and planters. A 1608 is a slow release, and you can find this anywhere. I mean, you can go down to Home Depot and get this. It's not a rare item. We suggest 6 times per year, but I should have put an asterisk. And because if your lawn is doing well, your irrigation is honed in, and it's covering what you want it to, you can probably spread that out to 3 months. So, planters, shrubs, and trees. This item is a little bit more difficult to find. You'll find it in a specialty store like a Green Thumb Nursery in Newhall. I'm not sure if Home Depot would have it, but it's a little bit more of a niche item. And for your shrubs and your planters and your trees, you can probably get away with quarterly fertilization. And this stuff is not terribly expensive. I believe it's like $5 a bag, and a bag will cover anywhere from 200 to 300 square feet. You can get a lot done with just one bag. And then another important item, we're in Santa Clarita, and this soil is tough, and it's very unforgiving, and it's got rocks and pebbles, and depending on where you are, it's going to vary. And I know that's a broad statement, but it really is different from one home to the next versus one community to the next. So the way that we recommend you offset some of these is putting in the right soil. And a 50-50 mix is universal. It's all over the country. It's not just specific to Southern California. And it's what most of us know as Miracle-Gro. It's very standard. You can find it anywhere. And it has all the nutrients already in there. So if you're adding and amending the soil every maybe 6 months or so, you're adding new nutrients into your planter beds. That's in conjunction with the fertilization and correcting your water. I mean, you're setting yourself up for success. And it drains really well. That's another really important thing. You want to be able to know when you're inspecting your irrigation and making your adjustments, if the soil's saturated and there's runoff, well, now we know we need to cut back that irrigation so that, you know, Mr. Lang, I believe, we don't get a call from him or a visit. So, and I wanted to point out, I put it in the notes and I didn't put it in the slides. We're being asked more and more, and I'm so glad Mr. Lang is here today. We're asking more and more from our communities to use organic fertilization and herbicides. It's readily available. It is a little bit more expensive, but if we know that that's what the end user wants, it's sort of like this organic trend with our food industry. If that's what the end user wants and it's available to us, we're absolutely going to use it. And it's becoming more and more prominent in the various associations we maintain. I'll tell you where it's most prominent and where they're having the most trouble with water is Beverly Hills, downtown Los Angeles, Pasadena, and I can assure you it's going to creep its way up to Santa Clarita really soon. But it's readily available. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's the right thing to do, I think. And your choice of plants is so important. You know, sometimes people get carried away with what they believe is the most beautiful thing in Home Depot or their local nursery, and they just assume it's going to survive in their lawn or in their front yard, and it's just not the case. And you'd be surprised, the nurseries that we deal with, whether it's at the wholesale level or at the local level, you know, at a Lowe's or a Home Depot, they're very knowledgeable. And if you bring in just about a quart full of your soil, they'll be able to give you better recommendations on what's going to survive and what isn't. And I've done it multiple times where I'll take a soil sample into a local, big box store, and they'll help me out with the right choice. Stay away from succulents. We're noticing a trend where a lot of people are asking for what's most commonly known as desert scape. We see a lot of it in our Las Vegas division and our Phoenix, Arizona division, and it's picking up steam here in Southern California. In theory, it's wonderful. You save money on water and maintenance and everything else that goes with keeping your front yard beautiful, but it doesn't always work. And that's where a company like Gothic or a number of different of our competitors here in town can help you. Give them a call, have us stop by. We'll say, look, it's a great idea, but we just don't think it'll survive in this layout, in these conditions, and with your specific irrigation system. That's another expense that you have to consider when you're thinking of converting to desert scape. We generally recommend that you only use them in pots, not to completely rehab your front yard. I'd like to open it up to questions if anybody has any. This is kind of a fun topic. If you have any questions at all, please just feel free to ask. It's fun for us. This is what we do every day. We get to play with plants. So, please.
Do you have recommendations for plants that can grow against a block wall fence that will knock down the fence, that grow tall enough to provide privacy and spread out to provide privacy, but again, not knock down fence, and to survive hot summers and cold winters?
Perennials, absolutely. And I have my business cards here. If you'd like, I actually just created a portfolio of about 20 species that do exactly that. And what these plants are meant to do is they're privacy plants. That's what we call them. It's a nickname, but they're privacy plants, and they're meant specifically for that. We've kind of shied away from the ivy and some of the things you saw in the early 80s. We found that those do more damage than they do help. But these are beautiful blooming perennials. It's going to consume water, so you've got to, assess the balance of, your return on investment. But absolutely, if you shoot me an email, and you can all find us on Facebook, we've got a killer Facebook page that we update regularly. I'd be more than happy to send that to you.
There seems to be a frustration in trying to get sprinkler heads that will sprinkle and irrigate water from the head out to the other surface, not ride around where the head is. There's lots of water out there. Years ago, I was out for the rain jet, a whole plate that was put on the raindrop, disappeared.
It was a fad.
Possibly the cost of manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
But the sprinkler heads today, if you have a narrow strip down the yard along the side of your house, you put those half heads in, the house is watered, and you can't go where you
Right.
And it seems like there's nothing out there really available to do some of the jobs.
You're absolutely right. And there are products out there, but they're very intricate. And if you look up what's called bubblers, they're actually specific to exactly what you're describing. Narrow planter beds or narrow strips of turf where you don't want widespread coverage. You can get them almost anywhere, but yeah, unfortunately, that's the problem with those. And I wrote down two programs that I'd love for all of you to check out. The first one is called freesprinklernozzles.org. And if you fill out a questionnaire and you send in a couple months worth of your water bills, they'll assess how much water you're using, and they'll send you free nozzles, actually up to 100 per home. So it only takes about I'm going to tell you, it takes about an hour to fill out the application, but it may very well be worth it. And the other one that's even more enticing than that is called SCV-H2O program. Has anyone heard of this? Fantastic program. We've actually already helped about 10 families get this program. It depends on how old your controller is and how old some of your irrigation system is. But if you fill out the application, you send in a couple months worth of your bills, they'll send somebody out to see the controller, and people are getting a $1,000 controller for free. There's stipulations. You definitely want to read the fine print, but you don't pay anything out of pocket. So those are two programs that we're offering right here in Santa Clarita. I can't even offer my clients in Northridge. It's very specific to right here, and I think it's awesome that we do that, Which one was that? The SCV. Well, I'm going to be devil's advocate and say in some cases probably less than what you're paying in water. Just depends. You know, you got to obviously weigh the two.
They have one area in Santa Clarita that they sample the weather, and we've got multiple micro climates around there.
Right.
I know about that program, and it does have a monthly charge program, and your controller is controlled by the master
weather
controller,
station.
the weather station.
At COC.
And, well, I think there's one up at the big wholesale water plant, too.
Okay.
And they aren't sampling the weather in the individual places. Downtown Canyon Country and Newhall and other places are different, and so your controller is not being fed the right information.
And you're absolutely right. You know, these weather track stations are meant to capture the weather at a local weather station, and in theory, it would represent what the weather in the entire area is like. You're absolutely right. Newhall is not the same as Saugus, as is Castaic, as is, you know, Canyon Country. I think everything has a benefit balance to it, you know. But we've seen it. I mean, the 10 families we've helped, I've got to be honest, they're within the HOAs we service, and they came to us and they said, our bills are ridiculous. They're out of control. Now, we don't maintain individual homes within an HOA. That's up to them to hire their own gardeners. We maintain more of the common areas. But they came to us, they showed us their bills, and, you know, they're loving it. So it may not be for everybody, but it's definitely an option.
Yeah, I took advantage of the water company's sprinkler head program. They call them digital. I put them in, nearly killed my lawn. I had to double the time on it, so there was no net savings. Some areas did real well. Others just completely went away.
Well, I'm the expert, and I obviously don't know what I'm talking about. Just kidding. I'd have to talk to you about the specifics. I don't know. I'd have to see what it was. And maybe, did you use the one that I was describing, the freesprinklernozzles.com or .org?
Yeah, it's a Toro new.
Yeah, the Toros.
You know, in some places it worked just perfect. In other places, I couldn't get the coverage at all.
I'd actually love to talk to you about it before I leave today. I want to get some more info on that. And you had a question.
Yes, my question was going back a little bit, just kind of a specific one you mentioned was ivy, problem with ivy.
Yeah. Ivy was one of those things that builder developers loved using for a long stretch of time. And what we're finding is when it latched itself onto walls, whether that be brick or concrete or what have you, stucco, the worse. When people's tastes change and properties look to invest some money in rehabbing an entire area, we go to pull it and stucco was coming down with it. And what you get with that is it rains, the water seeping beyond the stucco, you've got yourself a whole new problem. So ivy has become a bigger problem in replacing than it is to just leave there. So in some cases, we're recommending to people just leave it. Let us prune around it. Let's make it look as best as it can. But pooling it's just not the answer in some situations. We had that with an apartment complex in Valencia that was only 5 years old. In 5 years, it's grown above and beyond the carports. And at this point, we're just cutting it back slowly but surely, but you don't want to pull it all completely.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much for having me. I had a blast. Thank you so much.